you're on.
I am indeed. Good morning.
Fantastic. Good morning, Ben, headmaster at Canford. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
That's a pleasure. Lovely to see you.
We got there. Fantastic. Ben, just kicking off with a few questions on Canford life. I think, you make no apology. The Canford day is pretty jam-packed by all accounts. Do you think that that's intentional? Do you think keeping teenagers busy keeps them out of mischief?
I think what it really needs is you need a balance, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at the last few months where we've had periods of lockdown and remote learning and so on, yeah, it's been really critical there, I think, for the pupils to have a sense of structure, a sense of purpose, and that ability to sort of connect with each other in a formal way. I mean, obviously not necessarily always formal, but to have that degree of connection with community. So I think in that sense, having those formal programs and structures is really, really important.
Yeah.
And it's the same when they're here, but you absolutely need to give some headspace, some room to breathe, room to socialize as well. I mean, I think that sort of helps them in a sense of being creative and independent, and actually, I mean, a level of boredom is often a good thing as well. It can serve as a motivator in lots of ways. So I think getting that right balance is the crucial thing. I think that sort of enables them to, manage choices and decisions and actions and to be happy. And ultimately, you've got to give them the freedom to make those choices.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So going back a bit, Ben, your career might have started in the army were it not for a rugby injury. I believe you were then an oil broker for a number of years. Do you think that having that commercial experience has given you an edge?
Yeah, I'm not so sure it's an edge as such. I think it certainly gives perspective. I think having sort of operated in that wider world, and you're in touch with obviously with different sort of views and ways of thinking and doing things. I mean, I think anybody in any sector, if you're a lawyer, you're often surrounded by lawyers. So,
yeah, sure.
So I mean, I think it's a sense of perspective, but I think the really important thing is, and we sort of encourage this through our sort of teaching professional development side of things, is to really sort of be in touch with people who operate and work in other walks of life and in other sectors. So I think that's sort of really, really important, whether that's sort of local, regional, national or around the world. So I think that's critical. So maybe not an edge, but perspective.
Because I think the trouble is, otherwise you can get quite incubated in a wonderful educational bubble, which is, fantastic for a while it lasts, but it's harder to then, as you say, infiltrate into the real world, if you like, afterwards.
Yeah, I think the more exposure you can give people, and and yes, you're quite right. It is when you're in a school of any type, really, you are in a sort of a particularly sort of closed environment. So I think opening up that sense of perspective and engagement is really important. Yeah.
And on that note, Canford have had a history of being very strong on the sciences. I think I'm right in saying that A-level choices, maths and chemistry, still lead the way. I wonder whether, I think that also ties in with having a high proportion of medics in your parent body, or certainly that used to be the case. Do you attract as many girls to the sciences and maths as you do boys? Because that's one of the arguments, isn't it, in the co-ed sector, is that it can become gender specific.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the sort of 2021 statistics, if you like, we've got 348 sixth formers who are studying STEM subjects.
Right.
And 139 of those are girls, which is about 40%.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at our ratios, we're sort of 55-60% boys, 40-45% girls. So it sort of reflects that. Certainly, particularly maths, chemistry, biology, that there is a greater sort of level there. Physics is there is a more sort of there are fewer numbers of girls potentially studying physics there, but
right.
I think if you look across the STEM subjects, and that's not atypical when you look back year on year.
No.
I think in the sense of why STEM is so strong here, it's hard to tell, but a lot of those 348, they will also potentially be studying an arts or a humanities or an MFL subject as part of their sort of suite of 4 subjects that they start in the lower 6th.
Yeah.
So, you know, and those other areas are really, really strong too. So, you know, I'm as a historian, I would say that, but I think you know, those other areas are very strong as well. But I think, you know, societally, if you look at it, you know, there is obviously a lot of emphasis and pressure on studying STEM subjects. I mean, personally, we made that decision, and as a school, to keep the 4-subject approach, because we felt having that broader balance was really, really important. And what we do find is, you know, people will often sometimes take that arts or humanities subject forwards, you know, even if they're going to do medicine or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And also, I think it's, you know, often they're taking up an A-level that they didn't do at GCSE. So it's quite nice to at least have a sort of, as you say, the four options to give you some flex.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know, I mean, you'll often find people who are applying for medicine and other things, you know, the medical schools like people who bring a little bit more breadth to it as well. And I think, you know, I mean, if you look at sort of science-based degrees, I mean, you know, the percentage, if you look over the last 5 years, you know, we've had around 35, sort of 40% of those going on to study STEM-based degrees, again, are girls. I mean, this year, you know, 2 of our 7 Oxbridge offers were girls going off to study engineering. So, you know, which is fantastic. So, you know, I mean, there's always work to do to sort of open, you know, move things forwards, and particular areas, as I say, are a little harder than others, but it tends to attract a good proportion.
Yeah, fantastic. Ben, the senior school selection process is becoming pretty brutal, with children being assessed as young as 6, I think now, for entry at year 9. How do you at Canford make sure that you grab the late bloomers?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. And of course, you know, I mean, I think that sort of, you know, race downwards, it's not ideal. But having said that, in some ways, it's quite interesting. I mean, having done several years now of interviewing year 6 pupils as opposed to year 7, in some ways, they're actually fresher and more creative than they are when they're just a little bit older. So it's really interesting working with them. I think what we try to do, I mean, certainly with the assessment process, I mean, we don't have when you talk about it being brutal, we try to make it as happy an experience as we can. So, you know, we don't have rafts of exam papers and that sort of thing. You know, the day when they come, they do an adaptive online thing, they do a creative, you know, writing story, they have sort of group and one-to-one sort of discussions. So, you know, we try to sort of make it as relaxed as possible. But in terms of, you know, that looking at that development, I mean, we have several sort of stages, really, several options.
Yeah.
And what we do with each of those options is we will allocate a percentage of places at those different option stages, but we will hold some back.
Yeah.
Those who don't necessarily in the first option sort of, you know, if they don't get offered a firm place, then they will go on the waiting list. But we sort of, when we then do the next stage and the next stage, we look at those who then applied a little bit later alongside comparing up-to-date data of those who progress. So I think on the whole, you know, we do keep the door open for those who come along a little later. I've just had a couple of conversations this week on that score. Yeah. And I think in terms of when you look at the sort of quality of the pupils that arrive and the fit with the school, I think we do that pretty well. So, but it's a really good question, and it's something we also give a lot of thought to.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think the bottom line is there will always be people that slip through the system, but as long as you've got as many entry levels and as you say, sort of checkpoints, if you like, that you can keep the door open as long as possible, I think that's fantastic. Balancing home and work life, I always think heads particularly, because you sort of tend to live on site, you live and breathe the school, and then come the holidays, it all goes quiet-ish. I'm just interested to know, are you good at switching off? And if so, what do you like doing in those times?
I think the answer to that is no, I'm not good at switching off.
Very honest.
But I think to an extent that's also, there's an element of that is because, you know, this is a way of life. I mean, it's not a job as such. I think if you approach it that way, it's probably the wrong thing to be doing. Yeah. So in that sense, you know, I'm not very good at switching off because I am sort of thinking, and you're wandering out and about, and you know. So, but I think with the pressures that are there, you know, the real joy of it is when you're actually out and about. Yeah. You know, seeing what peoples are doing and so on, and that's why, you know, the last 3 weeks have just been so brilliant. Is all the sort of joy is here because the peoples are here doing what they're doing, and that sort of counterbalances perhaps some of the more frustrating elements and the
I'm
policies
sure.
and the paperwork and the frustrations. So, but I mean, what I do, I mean, I need to sort of exercise regularly because I have knackered knees from playing rugby, so I have to keep my legs strong. So I think I do that sort of 3-4 times a week, and
is that running, or are you a gym?
No, I tend to do a sort of I've got a sort of cross trainer and a little spin bike in the garage, so I go in there for a bit and listen to music and that kind of thing, and that's good, and that clears your head as well. So
definitely
it's good for the body and the mind. I enjoy reading and that sort of thing. Got three lovely dogs. I've got lovely family, and they put me in my place on a regular basis. And I do love golf. We're very lucky. We've got a beautiful golf course here. So it's been really hard over the last few weeks. But next Monday will be great. And I have a love-hate relationship with golf, as I think most people do.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, one day I might be consistent.
And actually, I think if nothing else, the past year has really taught us what the simple pleasures of life really are the best, and family and just hanging out and exercising and dog walking and all the things that you sort of were part of your normal structure have actually completely led us through this very strange time. So I think it's all, and especially where you're positioned. I mean, Canford, I think is one of the most stunning architectural buildings. It's set within something like 250 acres of beautiful Dorset country. So really, I'm not surprised you don't mind living there.
There are worse places to be locked down.
I was going to say, for sure. I guess you come across the usual restrictions within those amazing confines, because I mean, running a school is functional. I mean, but you've also got some incredible state-of-the-art modern buildings as well, haven't you?
Yes, I think we have that lovely juxtaposition between. I mean, the main house is stunning, and it's stunning in a really sort of warm and vibrant way.
Yeah.
You have historical. I mean, I worked at the school previously, which was incredibly impressive. The buildings, but actually they were quite imposing. Yeah. And I think here the historic building element is actually very warm and sort of creates that aura. But yes, we have got some fantastic modern buildings, and we've got a new sort of library learning centre going up, which is going to be absolutely brilliant.
Oh, wow.
The old library in the old house was a fantastic space, but it seated about 35 people, and we want the library to be a much more sort of inclusive and then all sort of embracing, and with the technology alongside the books and things. So sure. we have got that nice sort of balance, I think, between we're not hidebound by our heritage in that sense. But,
no. And is that building is that going up as we speak? What sort of stage is that at? Yeah,
that's due to open in the new school year. So
okay.
It was supposed to open next term, but obviously it's got delayed a little bit. But
sure.
I mean, we obviously take that sort of academic intellectual side very seriously, and that facility will be brilliant to to help sort of develop that and build those connections we want to do with sort of schools overseas and universities and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's going to have some good conferencing facilities and stuff.
Oh, sounds amazing. Fantastic. And as we said, I think the role of a headmaster is certainly multifaceted, and I think you are being sort of pushed and pulled in all sorts of different directions. Do I gather you still teach history a little bit?
Yes, I do. I teach one shell set.
Okay. So you keep your hand in.
Sort of year 9. So yeah. So and I mean, I love doing that. I think it's. I mean, fundamentally, I do it because I love doing it, and it's great fun. It's also a really good way of just getting to know some of the new pupils. I try and get all their names sort of by around half term in the first term. It sort of turns into they start kind of laughing at me when I get it wrong. But I try to get them all by around sort of half term time, which is great. So that helps a little bit with that. And I do the sort of we have a shell fourth form reading program as well. So I sit in on that. But it also I mean, it just keeps you in touch with some of the rhythms of my teaching colleagues. You've got pressure points where you've got reports or whatever, and of course it's not as all-consuming in that sense, but it just keeps you in touch with those rhythms, which I think is very important.
And teaching doesn't and shouldn't stand still. So I guess it is just, as you say, great to be at sort of grassroots level on the changes and technology that do. Not saying some technology works better than others, I think, but great to be at that level so that you really are at the sort of coal front.
Yeah, no. So, but but I love it.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
And I guess on the pupil names, you're hopefully taking in a reasonable amount of siblings. So hopefully, at least that gives you a slight hand in remembering everyone.
Yes, I mean it's the sort of first names first, you know, and
Yeah.
then but yeah, I mean we've got several sets of twins as well, which creates quite a lot of merriment. You know, they I think they quite delight in sort of confusing me in that sense. But
I bet.
but yeah, we do have a fair number of siblings. Yeah.
I was about to say, I mean, it always strikes me as a very family orientated school. So I mean, and with all I mean, I imagine there are lots of families that have put you know, all siblings through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it is a strong feature.
Sure. Yeah, it gives a very nice feel, I think, because it means that families are investing in you for a long period of time, and the other way around. You know, it's quite nice to have a few stalwart. We've got 4 children, so anyone that gets us has us for some 12 years or something terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
no, and that is nice, because I think, you know, I mean, as a school community, the stronger your relationships are, you know, whether it's, you know, one child going through or 3, but I think very often when you've got those sort of you know, the sort of sibling side of things, it helps with those relationships as well. Absolutely. Which is nice.
Absolutely. And am I right in saying you still have a reasonably high proportion of day children at Canford?
Yeah, we're sort of, I mean, we've been pretty steady at sort of 35% day, and we're sort of 65-70% boarding. That sort of fluctuates a little bit. You know, obviously the day spaces are a little more flexible.
Sure.
I mean, we've got various sort of plans at the moment in terms of co-locating with the boys' boarding, so that will all be sort of in place in the next 18 months, and then we'll bring the day pupils into the main house.
Yeah.
Which will give us more sort of flexible space there, and then it will also enable us to do some other things that we've got in mind in due course in terms of, you know, the offering, but also it's having that flexible capacity to sort of meet demand at different sort of points. Whereas Absolutely. At the moment we tend sometimes not to be able to take, you know, some really great children that we just haven't got the room for. So that's sort of looking at that. But I mean, yeah, so it's about 35% day, but we run fundamentally on a boarding model. So, you know, we're 6 days a week with lessons and sports on Saturday afternoon, stuff going on in the evenings. You know, day pupils will come in Saturday nights to join in when they can. At the moment, obviously a bit restricted. And likewise, you know, Sundays are busy. So I think, you know, those sort of day families that join us, I mean, the days are long. It's a busy and long and, you know, full on week. So I think they sort of buy into that, you know, kind of boarding life, but they just have to sort of go home at the end of the day, and then they're back in sharply the next morning. But but it helps sort of with that, you know, community feel, I think, as well.
Definitely. No,
but they're certainly not a bolt on. I mean, they're an integral part of what we do. And you know,
and I assume community is an important part of Canford life. I mean, I mean, you're obviously near to Wimborne, but do you feel that you are very much part of the community, and that you know, that the children learn to be sort of integrated within that and play their part?
Well, we have, and we put a lot of emphasis on that sense of, you know, the community partnership side of things. And I mean, you sort of go on the Schools Together website, you get a sense of, you know, the extent of what we do sort of locally and more widely. We have a sort of partnership link with the Bourne Academy in Kinson. You know, so I mean, inevitably, because we are what we are, we're sort of, you know, we're not sort of in and out of the community all the time, but we have a lot of links. We have a lot of guys who go and work in the local schools. We've got staff who are governors at local schools. You know, a lot of the pupils in normal times will be working in local organisations, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And we're a very large employer in the community as well. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So there are quite a lot of connections in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's this very busy day at Canford. Obviously, incorporates huge amounts of academics, but your sport is something that really strikes me as being a very strong part of your school ethos. I mean, you do host the most amazing. I think you host a school boathouse, 12 grass sport pitches, 2 full-sized all-weather pitches, 30 tennis courts, a 9-hole golf course, which we referred to earlier, and I believe one of the original real tennis courts. Do you think there's a sport for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, we do over sort of 20 odd different sports. So, I mean, I think our approach to sport is, you know, fundamentally that sense of physical well-being. It's such, I mean, alongside the sort of mental health side of things is really, really important. You want to instill a an understanding that being physically active is important for life, you know. And I think as a school, we are a pretty physically active school. You know, people are sort of buzzing around, and you know, it was one of the interesting things when the pupils came back from the last bit of remote learning was sort of after a couple of days ago, oh, I'm quite tired, you know, because they're on the move and they're doing stuff and they are physical in lots of ways, including through the sport program. So, you know, I think when we approach the sport, there's a wide range of sports on offer. So, you know, it's trying to promote that sense of participation.
Yeah.
So, you know, alongside that physical well-being and the mental support that brings, you want participation. You want people to be able to do sports that they're getting fun from.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously alongside that, you've got the performance element. And that operates on different levels. We've got pupils who will sort of push on and do national and regional representation. We've got others who really, you know, aspire to represent the school at the highest level. But similarly, you know, out there on a normal Saturday afternoon, when we're sort of, you know, running full fixtures and things, you've got over 600 pupils who are representing the sport in the school in some form of sport or other, whether that be cross country or squash or real tennis or, you know, hockey or cricket, rugby, whatever it is, rowing. So I think the answer to your question, the long-winded way, is yes. I think, you know, they find the thing that works for them, you know, whether that be down at the sports centre doing dance or a sort of, you know, broader sort of team-based thing. I think those avenues are there and they do engage with them.
And so many lessons learned beyond, as you say, mental health and performance. I mean, just so many life lessons learned on the sports fields, really, aren't there?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, we're doing some work at the moment, just looking at that whole sort of personal development and you know how that within the sort of the co-curricular context, but also through your academic and intellectual side as well, is how it actually all fits together.
Yeah.
You know, that sense. So we're looking at the moment at developing our strategy in the sense that, you know, people don't necessarily think, well, I'm doing hockey or I'm doing netball or I'm doing music or I'm doing drama. Yes, you do those things and you get a huge amount of pleasure and fun from that, but it's also those fundamental things that actually weave together that guide you and direct you through life and support you through life. So that sense of connection and coherence, I think, is something that we're looking at the moment, how they do that and articulate it and understand that. Yeah,
absolutely. Ben, what's something that most people don't know about you, an interest or a skill that you're going to surprise us all with?
Okay. I don't know if it's a skill that I still put into operation, but I was in the Sealed Knot when I was little, which is an English Civil War reenactment society. I've always loved my history, although as my history teacher at school said, you know, so Vessey, your interest in history is more of a romantic than an academic one. But maybe there's some truth in that. But I was in the Sealed Knot for several years, and I was in the King's Foot Guard No. 1 Company, based in Oxford, and I used to go around the country doing musters.
Oh,
and
wow.
I alternated between being a drummer boy and a powder monkey. So I did that till I was about 15, and then I just couldn't, you know.
You couldn't keep up. Yeah.
But it was great fun.
That's very cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And finally, Ben, I'm conscious of your time. So to wrap up, I think Canford celebrates its centenary in 2023. And I'd love to hear a little about your vision for the future of the school and what indeed the next sort of 10 years plus might look like.
Yeah, well, I mean, after the last year, predicting what the next 10 years is going to look like is really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you've still got to think about it, of course.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, what was very interesting was I mean, we had a big careers convention, which a year ago we just had to cancel. This year we were doing it online, so we had, you know, 240 pupils, 140 OCs and parents from a sort of vast array of different sort of career paths and all that kind of stuff. And you know, we were talking there about how creative and adaptive we've all had to be.
Yeah.
And I think sort of fundamentally, you know, that capacity for pupils to, I mean, what we really want to do is to give them, you know, those skills and that understanding and that insight. But as we've seen over the last year, and as they have done, is that ability to be flexible and creative, to use, have the confidence to use those in different ways, depending on, you know, where their passions take them or whatever. So I think in terms of the vision of the school, you know, that is a really important aspect of what we're trying to achieve. How we set about doing that, I think, obviously, we're constantly looking at the programs and the provision that we deliver, whether that's sort of on the academic side or more widely. I mean, we do the Ivy House program with our LERSIC, which is very much about learning about self-leadership. And we did away with prefects a few years ago. We have a much flatter sort of pupil leader program now, where they go through a pretty rigorous sort of application process, but they will take on areas of responsibility. So whether that's EDI or whether it's looking at environment or whatever it is. So I think the sort of those programs looking at the world around us, the society that we live in, the issues which are are powerful in that sense. So programs that develop that alongside obviously the more sort of taught curriculum and what's relevant and dynamic going forwards. But I think a lot of that sort of sits on what your values are, really. Sure. I mean, our vision, I mean back in the sort of 1923, the Reverend Percy Warrington founded the school. I just sort of read it. His aim was to fit boys to take their place in the battle of life and develop their character in every way, based on Christian values of being a tolerant, caring, compassionate society for all. And I think we've got different words now with that sense of wanting to be a community, where we teach the pupils to explore and challenge them to and inspire them to express in different ways and to excel as best they can. But I think that sort of that still resonates. So it's trying to sort of, I think that there's real strength in having roots in a school, but you need to look at it with fresh eyes all the time, and that influence. So the values that you bring to that, your vision, but obviously in the modern context. So any facilities and things that we develop have to support that. I mean, I'm not into kind of, I talk about the library and that sort of thing, but things that we're developing are fundamental to promoting those values and developing that sort of vision where they're going to get out there and, make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's fundamentally, I mean, I've visited a few times for matches and things, and it always strikes me as an extremely happy place, which is a very easy thing to say, but it really does. There's a real warmth, very progressive, but fundamentally very happy. And I think from that pretty much ripples everything else.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And I mean, we're a microcosm of society, so we have all the ups and downs, and obviously, the issues that flow through society are things that that we seek to engage with, and and obviously you have to rethink on occasions and work things and work with
absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, for me, the ideal is when those things come up is when the pupils actually engage and they reflect and they're constructive and they bring ideas and solutions. And I had a brilliant meeting on Saturday with a group of Lower Sixth who just came in, and I had just under an hour with them, where they just came in with some amazing ideas and really constructive and mature in the way that we're looking ahead to develop an understanding of some of the issues which are whizzing around at the moment, but which culturally are really important and that we need to work on.
Absolutely. And have you generally found that in the last, you've had them for just short of 3 weeks, are they generally in good shape? Or, I mean, have you seen some themes that you're concerned about over, that have been reflected over the last lockdown?
I think there's been a real sense of joy at being back and getting stuck in and seeing each other. Yeah. I mean, for some, I think adjusting to being in, socially and seeing each other and the dynamics and relationships has been interesting, and that's taken a bit of managing. Sure. And I think probably we're all finding that a little bit, and we will when we can start meeting up with people. It comes as a bit of a bit of a shock, but I think fundamentally, I've just been jotting my notes for the governor's meeting on Friday. That an overview. I think they've come back with real energy, real engagement. Yes, there's anxiety, and there's adjustment to do.
But fundamentally, they're in the right place, which is
great. I think so. And we sort of cut short our Easter holiday by a week, which so we could get an extra week in the summer, because I just think that's so important that that they're here and working together. Exciting times. Well, I really hope that the summer term is all that it should be. And thank you so much for your time this morning, Ben. We've had a real insight into life at Canford, and really interesting to hear your thoughts. Brilliant. Well, lovely to see you, and thank you for having me on
Not at all.
IGTV.
Absolutely. See you soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.